you go to any country outside and you see how our behavior changes. The most difficult part of travel within this country and even like a metro in Mumbai is not being able to have washrooms around us. I always say that in India queues are horizontal. They are never straight queues.
Right. Unless you go to Om Sai Pani Puri wala.
ओम साई शेरपुरी वाशी में है, बहुत लंबा लाइन रहेगा, पेशेंट रहना पड़ेगा, लेकिन वर्थ द वेट, इज द बेस्ट.
And find everybody in a queue.
Yeah, he insists that everybody needs to stand in the.
And a reward is something that shapes your behaviors, and there is a possibility of sustaining it.
Where do you think that different generations have commodified, used, and absorbed spaces or enjoyed spaces a little differently?
I think a lot of people are also making U-turns towards nature again, So we'll come there. What we have enjoyed the nostalgia for some time now.
So they say form follows function. Now what this means is that utility becomes the foundational lesson, and after utility comes in aesthetics. The question that one comes to one's mind is there anything beyond form and function? And that is when you realize that maybe its influence on future, its influence on our aspirations, how our behavior, habits are changed and influenced by form and function, is really the true culmination of any form of design. With that mind, we set forward to work on this podcast series called Form, Function and Future. And we couldn't have anyone better with us than Tejaswini Adhikari, the Chief Insights Officer at Future Groups. Look at the pun on future that we brought in here as well, where we are talking about the deep insights, where we reflect internally first, we understand our behavior first, and then from that stems the understanding and value that power of design can bring to the world and society. Tejaswini, as I mentioned, is the Chief Insights Officer at Future Groups, but is also a very dear friend, an advisor, and a chat partner. And I'm sure that we'll chat on many chart stories during this podcast and discussion as well. So thank you for joining us today, Tejaswini. It means a lot that you accepted our invitation.
Wow. Thank you, Sonam, for that wonderful introduction. And what a start, starting to talk about the roles that I played all the time. Being an insights person is actually being an inside person. So the core of insight is actually to look back, not only in terms of retrospection, but more in terms of reflection, which actually also goes very close to the function of design. And an insight anyway is a holistic viewpoint of what's happening around us and how behaviors get shaped, or how people receive information, process them, and bring them out in different ways, whether it is consumption of different things, whether it's a decision that you make for your son's admission to a particular school, or whether it is to choose a particular kind of food to eat on a particular day, or what kind of a holiday you want to take. So any and every of our decision has a huge backdrop of history, geography, culture, which we as individuals do not or cannot make note of continuously. So we may not be mindful of what is driving us, but that is what is the backdrop which is driving us all the time. And subliminally, all the influences that we have carried with us keep on replaying to us to form certain kind of behaviors. So an insight is actually basically just peeping deeper and deeper into what's happening around.
And how have these insights that you shared with Future Groups or any of your previous assignments really influenced design? Like, are there examples that you can share with us?
Oh, well, I mean, it's very difficult to separate an insight from design. And design actually is the structure which presents to us what's happening, or what that insight is about. So say, for example, if we were thinking about a particular kind of a retail store, and we are talking about what's the community around us, and ethnically, what is the community, geographically, what's the location like, what's the language which is being used there, or what are the cues that you receive in the local markets, what are the cues you receive in the homes of people. If we have absorbed those, and if we've created an insight platter, if I may say, the store should reflect that. So if we have, say, an Ashadi Ekadashi kind of a event, a landmark event in Maharashtra's life, and if we don't have not just artificial, टोपी पहने वाले लोग as your employees for that day, but if you really become part and immerse into the emotion of that particular landmark event in that particular place, like Ashadi Ekadashi, you'd have to sell goods of those kind. You'll have to arrange things in a particular way. If you were announcing certain kind of products, maybe bananas and all the other fruits have to sell the highest, and therefore some kind of deals on them will become very important. So an insight and design of things go so close to each other that they are the ones which actually bring in the community, bring in the essence of living into that particular place. So this is, I'm talking only about retail right now, but that's what happens everywhere, and I think that's what works.
So I'm not sure in this whether you're focusing more on the experience or the design of experience or design of the space.
Both. So design of space also has a large role to play to shape the behaviors of people. Like sometime back, I was discussing and I was saying that how do you find ease and comfort, in a store if you went abroad and you're suddenly marked by this experience of all the senior citizens out there, and you're suddenly actually not confused to see so many of the physically challenged people moving around, wondering whether in a developed country is it the number which is larger or what is it, only to realize, of course, that it's the design of the buses where the ramps move so smoothly, it's the design of the footpaths where there is a very smooth flowing of the wheelchair, it's the aisles and their sizes which are actually like small highways of cities in India, where two, trolleys or the two wheelchair persons can go together and same thing can happen on the other side. So, design of spaces actually keeps on, shaping a lot of behaviors around us. People find it easy to move, access things by themselves, which is a very innate human need to continuously stay autonomous, but if it is not addressed in the public realm, then it is of no use. And I do see a lot of work of design of space being more efficiently handled, in the developed world, where all these smaller nuances of life are taken care of, and which is what I think is very critical.
So what was, I know that you're a sociologist. You studied at TISS. So what was your first tryst with design?
So the similar example I shared in 91 was my first introduction to the US and my first visit, and I went there thinking that what the idea or the notion of development in our minds is also very different. And I went there thinking, that I'm going to see probably only highly educated people, and something very different was on my mind. Of course, there was no social media, we're reading only books, and not so equipped with knowing what another world is like. And the example that I'm giving is the example that came in front of me. At the airport, I land and I meet up with most senior people, elderly people working, and cleaning the airport, in the shops. And I was like, oh my God, because the kind of experiences we have in India, in relation to respect and regard, begin at home and end at home, whereas I'll explain a little more about this, a little loaded statement I'm making, And then the second thing that I saw in New York City, where I landed first, was, the buses and, the way the elderly as well as the physically challenged people were moving around. I came across a person who was visually impaired and had a sensor light, to his white cane. And, he could make out that there is somebody crossing by him. And in fact, we would get surprised to hear him, press the bell that we move away from him.
Oh,
So
nice.
I felt that I was extremely impressed by that design. And when we, gathered together and we were sharing our experiences and talking about what we saw, and my first reaction was that, is it that, an implication of development that there are more, physically, visually, or otherwise challenged people who are in the US, and only to realize that, it's actually the great marriage of design and people's needs coming together, which
Inclusivity.
is, yeah,
Like you're,
yeah, in every possible way. That's the right word. How inclusive and how, what would I say, how just simple thought of the nuanced needs. See, finally, what's a good design? A design that absorbs the need. What is insight doing? Insight is actually articulating that need and the reasons behind it. So if there is that kind of a marriage between the two, the wonders that it can create, that everyone has a right to enjoy, everyone has a right to reach out, everyone has a right to travel, meet up with people, stay happily, buy for themselves. The whole idea of independence, autonomous living, I saw it come alive there through design.
I think since you're talking about rights, I think it makes more sense to talk about, constitutional examples also, where you have equality, freedom, justice. And through your insights, have you ever felt that design has that potential? If the designer or the architect envisions that it is their duty to fulfill these constitutional requirements. Now, I'll give you an example. When we were working on inclusivity and universal design and access, one of the first primary things that were told to us was that you need to imagine lifespan design and not design only for the disabled. Now, when you look at lifespan, you will assume that a 10-year-old boy who was playing football gets fractured and hence is using crutches to go to his or his school. You will assume and understand that a pregnant woman has different requirements for crossing a road than a completely fit and able-bodied person. You will understand that ergonomics of a little child is very different from a very old person. And that is where true inclusivity really stems in from, that understanding of lifespan. And then you will not say that we are only doing it for the disabled, or we are only doing it for those people who are crippled, or whatever other words that many a times we use. But of course, there are many. One is very conscious about calling them differently abled or special or disabled. Like, what is the right word to choose or use from them? Because they influence your thinking about those individuals as well. So now the question really comes is, as designers, do they have the potential and the power to change the way in which the society acknowledges, addresses, or behaves around persons with different needs?
So, do they, you are referring to designers?
Designers,
Do they
yes.
have? In fact, design is the only thing which does shape most of our behaviors. And I keep thinking about the public realm all the time. And there's a study that we'd done for the railways, and I remember how we were suggesting very simple kind of mechanisms by which basic things about hygiene could be probably responded to. Say, for example, our whole challenge of the middle class and about to travel in the trains has been the cleanliness and the habits of people, or the or the design flaws, which lead to such a moving train, to be used for various purposes, and we have not been able to yet resolve those, even simpler things like standing in queues, or having instructions written in multiple languages, or I mean, all these places where, design could play a very, benches for anybody to sit, if you're saying senior citizens or women who are pregnant, or anybody for that matter, if they wanted to just sit somewhere. Our clinics, our hospital settings, our gardens, all public infrastructure really needs to make note of a lot of things around them to be able to say, therefore, what are we ready to offer? you know.
Toilets, washrooms.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
those
that's the thing that I was coming to say that, the most difficult part of travel within this country, and even like a metro in Mumbai, is not being able to have washrooms around us. How does one really, I mean, why would we want to escape or skip the basic human need? The number of hours we travel on the trains or to reach any place in Mumbai is such a Herculean task in terms of traffic. We just don't have ways of dealing with it at all. So design has very wide scope. It is extremely agnostic in nature. It offers itself to everybody, provided the designer brings out those kinds of methods, those kinds of structures, those kinds of products, which will then be able to influence behaviors. In fact, I feel that if we are able to create those, you go to any country outside and you see how our behavior changes, because that design conveys to you that you have no other option. How does that whole it
So you're
creates,
saying that discipline in Germany and Japan comes through design and not through nature and habit?
it's a great culmination. That's a very good question. It's a great culmination of both the things together, but design shapes it further. It endorses. You can say that we are a very disciplined nation, but if there are not enough number of dustbins on the road, if there is no segregation indicated from home to public space, nobody will behave. I always feel that if we are able to create such structures where, some brownie points I will get if I'm doing a particular thing right, like just don't feel like throwing the piece of paper that you have in your hand until you reach home. Sometimes you're holding it because you haven't come across a single dustbin anywhere. I'm not saying that. I understand it's my own responsibility. It's a civic sense that that is built in me, thankfully, and therefore I would do it. But for somebody to make that into a habit, say for example, spitting pan, would we have some kind of a way of shaping those behaviors by doing certain things? We do see a lot of those tiled God's faces, which
Yeah.
then start behaving as probably the protectors of those corners of new painted buildings, etc. But I feel that if there is a reward mechanism that we are able to create, it will start changing, and only design can create it.
Have you always been punitive in terms of our approach to making people behave in the right way?
Generally, we haven't
As a government and a system, or
Yeah.
is it also because from your perspective of working with corporates, I think reward is very much a part of changing habits, or even creating new habits.
in public policy you would not, those are very different. Those kind of perks and benefits are extremely different and very closely linked to the internal environment, internal value system of the organization. As civilians, if we were to look at, we hardly, what's the reward you have for anything you did since morning? Do you have a single reward? If any time
I bought a metro card
Huh.
and it was for 1,000 rupees, like that I paid in as a recharge. And I said that because it's a card, it's not like the benefits that you get with a pass. Do I get them on metro? I said no, 2% discount. So on 1,000 rupees, I got 20 rupees off.
But not bad, not bad. But that's not a reward again. A reward is something that shapes your behaviors, and there is a possibility of sustaining it. So as civilians, what kinds of rewards we should be able to receive, is something that design can definitely, shape. And most of the things that you want to get, come through, come in the realm of civic behaviors. And it's possible that designers can actually create multiple rewards for us. Say for example, I have never traveled without ticket. I'm not doing a favor to anybody. It's my own decision and I follow it. But somewhere, sometime, can there be something connected to it, that one can enjoy and say that, that starts influencing others, or it acts as a snowball. This may not be the best example, but there could be something that we do, by which we are able to, take it to others, influence others' behaviors and see a change coming through. It's possible, and it is really required today. So both the things I feel. One, the kind of things. Say for example, if you want people to come in queues, how do you define a queue?
Yeah.
I always say that in India queues are horizontal. They are never straight queues.
Right, right.
So everybody is at the bank counter and say excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And we are also tailoring. I mean responding, not tailoring, responding to those kinds of
Unless
things.
you go to Om Sai Pani Puri wala
And
he
find
insists-
everybody in a queue.
Yeah, he insists that everybody needs to stand in
And
the queue.
everybody is ready to be there because
Yeah.
they love the pani puri
Yes.
there. I agree completely. Wow. But yeah, I feel there are many
So then
such
it is a behavior that still can be induced, no?
Yeah, yeah.
And whether it is through design or it is through the systems that you fit
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Because when you mentioned reward, no, suddenly what clicked me was a few months back, you had the Mumbai Railway, the Mumbai local, coming up with lottery tickets on the ticket number, saying that you buy a ticket and you may actually win a lottery and things. So the idea of award, like this insight that you shared, is now integrated into a part of the design of the ticket, is also integrated into the system that they're following. Now, of course, I did not follow up on whether someone really won that lottery or not, but that was a novel idea that came in early.
So there are, say for example, China's whole policy about children was, the moment you practiced it, you would be rewarded in so many ways. So that was a very large decision as a country they took and created a design of thought, a concept around it, the why of it, connected it to the national goals and ensured that people participated to bring the country to a certain level.
Right.
So there's much conversation on whether it should be or that apart, but the role that design can play has, we've always had, there's this wonderful statement we have on the behind the rickshaw, mulgi shikli pragati
Pragati
zali. Ask anybody in this room, everybody would know that. And it is taken very seriously. I was in Satara and I met with a auto rickshaw wala guy, and I was asking him, what is his daughter, what are his children doing. So he said, I have two daughters, both studying, both are doing very well. My dream is to bring them up in life, and that's why I work hard. And he does two jobs. So I was like, that's wonderful. How did this happen? So he said, Vatsla nahi ka, did you not read behind my rickshaw, mulgi shikli pragati zali. So if I want to see progress happening, I must ensure that my daughters are.
Yeah.
So there's such a phenomenal influence of linguistic cues that you can create, signs and symbols that can create so many wonderful things to happen. Public infrastructure, having lot of furnitures around, books, or seating places in the gardens, design just can offer everything and get what it really desires to create in the society. I came across, while we are talking about it, I came across, I heard about this one and then saw a lot of pictures of that. Pods, reading pods, book pods created in communities where, you don't have to buy all the books, but you could leave those books there, and how parents come and take those books for children to read, and young mothers spend time there, make friends with each other in the community, make their children find new friends there and exchange books and leave them, I mean,
These are in gated communities or they're open for all?
they're open for all, but these are certain kind of, in a way, yes, they could be also called as gated communities. Say for example, Sector 16 of Panvel, could have such 10 pods, where an exchange happens. So people from outside of the gated communities, but yet in a particular area
Range,
can, exchange and can have experiences of that kind. I also like this whole concept of thrift stores that we find outside, and I like the concept of books being available at very low price, and how therefore actually how senior citizens hover around these places, spend a lot of time reading, meet up with each other, and just one small coffee counter, and it's available free. It could be charged, but do we have a single community center which behaves this way? People have to really make great efforts here with us, even though resources are absolutely available, it is not yet entered into our DNA to create such experiences for each other, you know.
And that is one thing that I think you tell the designers to about also, that the community aspect of design should always
Yeah,
kind
it's-
of come to the forefront.
Yeah.
But I also think that in our case, now in Indian scenarios especially, like internationally, you're talking about 4-day working weeks. You're talking about 9 to 5 being the only time of work and nothing else. And here, all those other jobs are outsourced to India. You're staying day and night. You have to address to time zones of Australia, America, the Europe, and all of it. So that work-life balance for many urban Indians
It's
is
tough.
slightly twisted. And in that situation and in that context, in the pressures of job, of losing job, of retaining one's job, I'm not sure whether like in the whole, we say tragedy of commons is that if one person becomes selfish, then the commons is not for equally for all. I think the problem with in the Indian scenario is also that there are so many people who are so deprived of time that the aspect of community can never really be truly enjoyed by Indians. Have you had that kind of an experience or insight, or is this just an assumption that may not be true?
Actually, it's the other way around. Indians truly connect and live. Their identity comes through their community, and they keep on
All of
finding.
us, like all the generations,
No,
like
not
from
at all.
millennials to
The-
the Gen Zs,
Yeah. Therefore, what happens is, with my generation, it may be a physical connect. You know, with yours, it may be a combination of both. But with the youngsters here, it's very different. Okay, but the community sense and the sense of belonging, see, it's one of the very basic needs. You know, in if you say Maslow's hierarchy, I mean, this wanting to belong is going to be very common. It's built up in all of us, whether you are Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they are going to experience some time of their life at least connected to family. The technology will try to overpower everything, but the way in which families are, what I'm finding is the pace of change at one level is extremely high right now, which is brought to us through the technology, which is digitized. But rest
in
of it
our
is,
hands.
yeah, and rest of it is continuing the same way. I mean, I don't see anything changed at all in that sense. I mean, people still enjoy going out and feeling the vegetables and smelling them and buying them.
Blinkit has not changed it.
No, it just makes it available to you whenever you wish to. I agree to that part of it. But at the same time, all the Gen Zs are available. Last night it rained and I saw, but the Navratri Dandiya was full. People played with umbrellas in hand, and that was a new form of dance that I noticed. Actually, I have a video of it of last night's Dandiya.
The umbrellas were shut or they were open?
They're
and they were
open
swaying?
and they're having fun. So there was exchange. They were passing over. They did marvelous things with it. It's like a prop for a dance,
Right.
So you use it the way you wish to. It was fun. So I feel that our sense of community is very deep rooted, and it's very difficult to give it up so easily. It passes on to each other. The time zones, I mean, the time that people spent earlier has undergone change for sure, but the modes have also changed. There are umpteen Zoom meetings people do today.
Correct.
There are various ways by which you bring yourself together. And now community is not just family. Earlier the idea of community was family and people around you only.
Right.
Today the supper clubs, the way they have picked up at home. I mean, so many new people you are ready to get into your homes and have fun with and create a new sense of community. So I think as societies evolve, the forms will undergo change, but they play the same function again. So I think it's just wonderful.
So in your more than 30 decades of observing the community people, have you noticed if there is a change in the commodification of space and consumption of space? Like, because I remember as a child, my parents never really took us out on umpteen like travel programs every weekend. If there was like a sandwich leave was specially taken only to ensure that we step out of the house and it's a getaway, even if a smaller or a larger thing going abroad. Those were not a part of our family, collective things that you do as a family. But if you look at the generation right now, the moment you get a chance, you're like, let's step out and let's, like the road to the Mumbai Panvel Express Highway, especially on long weekends,
Chocker
always
blocked.
gets chocker blocked. And people are ready to wait all this while because they are in anticipation of some destination. And the point is whether this destination is nature, which is, like natural, or is it a commodified space? Are you looking at a resort and then enjoying it? So how do you think, and this is just an example, I'm sure that you will have many more from common general life also, where do you think that different generations have commodified, used and absorbed spaces or enjoyed spaces a little differently?
I think it's bound to happen, and see, to aspire is very human. So various kinds of things are part of our aspirations all the time. Travel is part of, actually it's one of the topmost aspirations. Culturally it's ingrained in us, So I remember while you're saying this, the Marathi saying, if I may just say it, केल्याने देशाटन पंडित मैत्री सभेत संचार मनुजा शहाणपण येतसे फार. So it's built in the individuals through the families to make.
You may have to translate it first.
It means Deshatan means travel, and not just travel across the country. Deshatan, just go out of the country also. And it's a very old adage actually, Pandita Maitri, make friends with intellectuals, converse with, Sabheta Sanchara, talk to them, meet up, The only way, Manuja Shahanpan, that means only way to become wise and prudent in life are these three methods by which you vote, It's ingrained in us. It's very natural to do that. Of course, there are many other reasons to it, I mean, it's just not commodification of things that one really has to, consider as a reason. Sheer availability of disposable income is one of the biggest reasons. The car being available. So you create the same family in the car again. I mean, you look at the number of bags that you carry with food, water, whatever, you want to enjoy, you want to feel everything, which is what is very human to be able. It's the mobility part of it that we are now looking at, and nature is going to take time to come back to us, we started there and we are in a stage where we have actually parted right now, and we are getting the artificial feel of things, and I think a lot of people are also making U-turns towards nature again, so we'll come there. What we have enjoyed the nostalgia for some time now, we've started feeling the loss of certain things now, COVID actually opened our eyes to many more things, and therefore we humbled, we understood many more things differently, and therefore we'll come back there. Right now, I think we are in a stage where we want to feel nature, but in a very sterile manner. Where I heard a very sad thing about a school which takes children to play in the soil, but before that they wear gloves in their hands. So there are various expressions and modes and roads through which we reach back to nature. So everyone is at a different stage and trying out. So people find that going to New Zealand is their best idea of experiencing nature, or going to Australia, seems to be the most popular destination right now because nature is felt there.
Correct.
So we'll come back to feeling the Sayadris and the Aravalis. Will take time, but we'll come back there.
Because since the examples that you're giving are also of global experiences that people are having, I also feel that the commodification of space is maybe a outcome of this global systems. Like when Saskia Sassen talked about global cities, you do have different purposes and utilities for which you do travel to other places. Like airports were always just simple spaces. Now airports have been commodified, like the space inside the airport has been commodified completely differently.
Yeah, you can live there for days.
Exactly.
And
Terminal is an
live
example.
probably much better than what you live in your own home, because you never
And lounge pe free khana milta hai. Like the
that's what.
systems are also in place for you to do that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And this is where I feel that somewhere, since we are moving towards capitalism, we are looking at a more profit based or business strategy based exploration. This is something that I would want you to really strongly weigh your opinion on. Ki when it comes to design, very creative, very aspirational. Like you said, like it has a vision and it has the potential and the power to change behavior. And business, on the other hand, is very cutthroat, numbers, strategy. Now, from your experience, how do you marry the two of them?
Actually, there is nothing separate about them. And
Why, if someone says that I don't care about anything else, I only want to look at profits, the numbers matter. That is what business is about, right?
yeah, so one is the profit part of it, the money matters of it. But what is more important in the market is, say for example, some names of large entrepreneurs or business people, stay with you forever, and not just those individuals, but the way they built their organization. So I think there is also a Maslow's hierarchy kind of a thing where one is the market share, which is the profit share that you're talking about. How much of a particular kind of, say, a pizza industry in India, and how does it do, or any such, or milk or cheese or whatever, versus there is also mind share and there's heart share,
Right.
So I think it's very, very transactive to say that profit share is the ultimate goal of a business. If it is, then that business is bound to fail. Because unless you reach into people's minds and capture a space in their heart, by doing things which design does, the magic can only happen when design works. And unless you make note of those, you look at how the aisles are created today. The sensible designer will have particular kind of gondolas, build in things together, what goes with what. There's so much of a thought without which, market never ever works,
Can you elaborate a little more on these aisle designs and shop designs, gondolas? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm not an expert, retail expert in that sense, but what I mean is to say that easy access is something that people look for. So, for example, if you're in a puja area of a particular place, in a particular store, there's always a puja area because there's so much of religiosity that, that one experiences inside homes. And if you have those simple, plastic garlands, hanging at the end, like a gondola is the vertical base on which something is kept there, the last minute thing or the first thing that you see and you feel like entering into that aisle, so these are the things that
So they become markers. They
become,
help you.
yeah, they're actually inviting you into that space, so because you couldn't be saying it all the time, there are products have to also speak to you, or they do speak to you, so what I feel is, unless there's a heart share of different kind. I remember some of the services that you have in your original markets that you go to, the regular local markets, we don't find them inside our stores, right? Say, for example, you go and buy coconut, the nariyal wala asks you and says that todke chahiye ya akka chahiye, that becomes an offering or a service to be planned when it is inside a modern retail store, The heart share is the part of asking. The heart share is about when you buy the vegetables to get twigs of kadhi patta free on it.
Correct.
How does that happen in a local market so easily? How do they say, or how do they do it? It's also very planned business strategy itself, but it works wonders. The sense of heart share, and the kind of connect that happens in the process is at another level altogether.
Are we losing this heart share in the way in which we are formalizing these transactions? Like the Kadi Patta example that you gave right now, I cannot go to a cinema theater and ask for a bhaiya thoda aur nachos dal do na. Like the size of the popcorn tub and all of it is very standardized.
Right.
Now, how do you make space for heart share in a design which is so structured around these standards?
Yeah, I like this question. See, there wasn't, or there may not be the part that we spoke about in the formal, setup. But there's buy one get one free happening there. There's, the Coke being filled twice, which is offered to you there. So come back if you have a, large nachos, and a caramel popcorn. There's a Coke which will be a refill for
Combo
you, in
that
the
comes
combo.
to
So there are different ways by which, or in the gold class, you are served with the food inside the theater while you are watching the movie. So, I mean, many things happen and can happen, provided you realize the need of that audience. You realize when the audience comes in the night for a show, is there a dinner equivalent kind of a spread that you have in the
Correct.
tray, and not just offer those mundane samosas all the time. So that's the design element, or the way in which the box is created, that it's never eaten just by yourself. It's always either going around or it's been shared between two people.
Correct.
Does it have a base? I mean, many things that one really needs to. Or do you offer a, paper napkin with it at the end of it to wipe your hands? Lots of very, very small, nuanced kind of critical things can create joy.
So what I understand from you is that, or what my key takeaway right now is that a design of a space is not just about the form and the function, essentially. It's really about the experience, about how you feel, how the mind share and the heart share is also added in to ensure that there is value, there is inclusivity in the space. Now, one of the most predominant, like keywords these days is sustainability, is climate change, is awareness about one's behavior. Now, one argument is that ensuring that all 1 billion of us become sustainable in our lifestyle is one way of ensuring that we save the planet. Alternatively, we say that the corporates take responsibility and just don't feed into a demand which is unsustainable, and kind of deliver systems in a way that is sustainable in itself. And that may be a faster way of ensuring that we change mindsets, or because it's just not available now. So then it's so what is your opinion about these two directions? One is where everyone is encouraged to look at their carbon credits, carbon footprints, and curtail them on an individual level. And the second one says that maybe it's the larger people who have the larger share of the market who can take bigger decisions to make the difference in the world. So where do you think this design as an element should now be placed in the power of the individuals, or should it rest with?
See, it becomes very effective only when it is more democratic. Instead of asking one body to respond and take care of everything, and which again you are saying is the corporate business body. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, but at the same time, it's very difficult because their systems are continuously making note of how much of money is being poured into for generating what they have to generate. So yes, that sense of responsibility has to be there with everybody. Why only them? So it's not only them, but everyone else has to. But if it has to come for sustaining our sensitivity and sensibility towards nature, towards pollution, towards all kinds of things happening around, I think it should be at individual level. The restraint, reward, and punishment, everything has to be at individual level. I was sharing an example where I remember a friend of mine, who is in the UK, and she has to travel a distance to come to the city, to come into London for work. And every time she comes, she has to pay a tax at the toll, which is not a toll. A toll is different. A tax for adding to the pollution of the city.
Right. That is something they do in Mahabaleshwar as well.
Correct.
When you enter the Kshetra, you have to pay the environmental tax.
Correct. And therefore that dissuades her from bringing the car. Because the tax is not less. And if she doesn't bring the car as many times, then in her next registration time, she gets a particular car. different kinds of rewards are available on that, you know. So I think many such things can be. In fact, we can list out our behavior starting from morning to night and say what role can design play into this to achieve the larger goal we are talking about. And why we seriously concerned on this, I feel, is that, you know, more you practice, more you rehearse a behavior, you know, it impacts many other functions around creating culture.
Right.
And I think that is what is more critical. When we say that there's a separate lane, say for motorcyclists and cyclists, and we follow it, or we have very grave concerns that we have on our roads is when an ambulance has to go past. I mean, you feel terrible about being in that car, you know. You want to really take a U-turn or jump out or do something, you just can't do anything than listening to ton that's happening there.
Right,
You know?
right.
So we will have to create some such mechanisms where we are told to, you know, take care of. Say, for example, maybe we should check with the traffic police where, you know, breaking of signals has reduced or not, because now there are hidden cameras
Correct.
and we are getting the tickets, you know, left, right, and
In the
center.
emails directly,
Yes,
yeah,
in the email directly with the photograph there, you know. So,
Evidence.
yeah. So I think it's at the individual level that the change should start, and design of things can really impact us in different ways, and change can come about.
I remember around 5 years back when DMart had decided to move or shift from plastic bags to
Yeah.
cloth bags. And they had put out those posters in front of the stores that, you know, after this date, you're not going to get it. But it's not that every day you go to DMart to know that today is the day you're supposed to carry a cloth bag. And when people came at the counter, they are used to having a free plastic bag. And suddenly they're like, "Nahi, you'll have to pay 15 rupees for the cloth bag." And the amount of ruckus that was created by this decision is because people are not ready to accept that even if it is for the greater good, even if it is for the environment, even if you can keep the bag with you forever, still it is an additional expense that one is incurring and one is not comfortable with it.
Correct,
So yes, so that whole balance of how the corporate looks at the insights and foresights for a green collective future against how an individual looks at it is for sure
Sure.
something that we need to all bring together. So Tejaswini, you mentioned the word democracy. Earlier you also said that design is sector agnostic. So how do you think that, you know, as a designer, you can actually elicit these values of democracy into the design?
Well, design has the potential to create an experience, you know, which is applicable to anybody and everybody. In fact, a good design, say for example, what would I say, a bench in a garden, you know, how it is made will decide who will be able to sit on it, how ergonomically, like we were talking earlier, you know. More than that, I feel a good design or an effective design is when it allows people to engage with it, you know. It allows people to participate in it and to be able to experience it in return, you know, that the design becomes more meaningful. And more you can use it, explore it, you know, it is possible that people's engagement in it will grow and it thus becomes more democratic in its nature. So in itself, it is not a piece which has decided to be for only somebody, but it could turn out to become for that particular category of people. Say, for example, little children. And the school bus and the design inside the school bus, you know, how children are able to talk to each other, how they are able to, you know, have some fun in the bus itself will be defined, and yet be very safe, you know, will be defined largely by the design that is created inside that particular school, or the quadrangles of a college, you know, what does it offer, does it let people mingle in, does it let people have, you know, some kind of engaging space where as youth you are able to think, as youth you are able to build something. An amphitheater is also a classic example for something like that in a college site, you know. So in itself, if it is able to create, an engagement dimension to its being there, I think it becomes it starts offering more to the design as well as to the person. And I think that's a bigger and greater value that a designer should keep in mind, or when kept in mind, it turns out to play a lot of things that way.
But Tejaswini, if one is going in that direction, the suggestion of engagement or the suggestion of participating with the design is coming post the design, which means that you have to think of the user while you are designing, and then that engagement and participation happens after the design has been executed. But isn't true democracy about participation even before?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
now, how do you engage with your audience, with your target group, before you actually step into the shoes of a designer, before you begin the design, before you draw that first line?
So, asking people to become part of that whole experience. How do we create it? Asking children to create the classroom, the way they would like it to be, and then actually that would open up our eyes and ears to what actually a child looks at as more important. I remember the book Toto Chan, where the teacher conducts the entire class in the train, and how that whole experience became so different when he took the train ka dabba and created the classroom within it, because the value that you perceive of a place is very different most of the times than what is perceived by the receiver. So the lesser the gap between the two, which can be through the ideal most situation, is that people design things for themselves, create it and use them, and most of the times we have seen that they've worked very well.
Right.
So if there is a pond, what part of it is used for cattle and what part of it used for drinking water, hasn't just happened, as some magic happening. It's been created through experiences of people being part of it and deciding how water could be probably used, the water body could be most effectively utilized. So more engagement of people is going to bring more meaning to that piece of work or that piece of design that is created.
I think, Tejaswini, towards the end, I would want you to just share, according to you, what from this conversation and otherwise also, if there are any key lessons or tips that you would like to share with designers, that before they approach a design, XYZ are the notions, are the values, are the ideals that they should work with to ensure that the design is enjoyed the most by the people of this country, by the people of the world. Then maybe that could be the takeaway from this entire segment.
Wonderful. No, I feel that design inherently is very unconditional and very non-judgmental. It offers itself through a product or through various things. I mean, even linguistic cues are products, or services, and asks people to make use of it the way they can. And therefore, to keep in mind the value of access, free, open access, the value of, inclusivity, the value of, what would I say, ease. I think that is what is very important. The efficiency part of it is extremely critical. We've gone through a time where the only technology piece that we had was the key to the car, if you owned a car, or the lock to the home, घर का tala, and opening that again with a key was the only technology I remember. We started there, or even prior to, even something lesser than that also. And we've really come across, come ahead a long, long way. And the efficiency of technology that we experience today, if design is able to render itself to everything around it, and also the efficiency in terms of, I was telling somebody about say for example, the multiple usages of a thing is also going to actually
Multifunctional.
multifunctional, yeah, is also going to bring in much more ease to people. What one also has to think about is some kind of frugality to be associated with it.
Correct.
There's a need to not to have an expend part of it growing just because you're into designing things. If you look at people's home, that's why an insight really needs to get married. to design, a computer table during Ganpati is turned into Ganpati Bappa ka table.
Correct, correct.
You don't go looking out for buying another table.
Yes.
And in the night, the same table is used by Gen Zs to eat dinner while watching movie together. So how does one really bring in those kinds of elements together, or the way in which we are living today? Are we making note of if there's a studio apartment? What is the Gen Z requirement today? I saw some homes in Singapore where studio apartments don't have kitchens, and that's their USP to the buyers, to say that these homes have saved on the space of kitchen, because in any way Gen Z doesn't come home, and all of them are eating in the mall, same food, talking to each other there, finishing off and returning to their studios. So there are many such things that really require attention. Simple things like creches, in this country, gardens, taking care of, all kinds of people around, when population is so large, and, there's reversing of age which is happening today. Do we have, thoughts about, bars? Simple building and apartments don't have bars to hold while you have to climb when lights
Correct.
go off so often.
Correct.
When that kind of a sensitivity is rendered, I think any design is going to become beautiful. Yeah.
Wow, that was really phenomenal, Tejaswini. Thanks a lot for all those deep insights that you shared with us. And it was, I'm sure that the last 40 minutes that everyone listened into this conversation has added in a lot of, the power that a designer feels in their actions, that when you put a line on the paper and that influence that it builds and creates into the lives of people has been expressed really beautifully by you. So with this, I think from our side, we would be really happy to extend our gratitude in the form of this small hamper. It's from Hello December.
Oh, wow.
We feel that when it comes to what we are offering you, it's not just the ideas that you have shared with us right now, but also from our perspective, the collective knowledge and information that we have at Pillai's college and institution. So we have this book here as well, which was written by Professor Smita Dalvi. It's titled Celebrating India in 75 Buildings. So this last 75 years since independence to now have, from the architectural perspective, have been kind of collated into this. And the second book is actually by yours truly, along with Professor Smita Dalvi. And this is a book on Panvel, the place where we are sitting in right now. And it kind of narrates the whole history, heritage of Panvel as well. And this is a small hamper from us from Hello December, which is a chic expression of styling that you find very rarely in our market and field. And I'm sure that when you open it up, the hamper is going to unveil many surprises to you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you, Sonam, and I'm sure we're all, in the process of thinking and rethinking. Like we always say that the only good learner is the one who unlearns and relearns, So I think this podcast has been that kind of an experience to me also, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you once again, and wish you many more to come.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with this, we have come to the conclusion of the first episode of the Mahatma Education Society's podcast titled Form, Function and Future. The intent of this podcast is to look at how insights and lessons that are generally trapped inside boardrooms and not meet the classrooms or the conversations with students and faculty can actually be enhanced through discussions with extremely knowledgeable individuals that are open to sharing their experiences and ideas with us. So with this, we thank all of you for listening in, and stay tuned for the next segment where we will be focusing on the big picture and zooming out into the city. So from reflecting inside and internally through the behavioral sciences and social sciences that Tejaswini brought to us today, we will now be zooming out further into the city and exploring it from the lens of an urban planner.